Hello and welcome to Beyond Today, the program that addresses the future of our community through conversations with people who are working today for a better tomorrow. I'm Ray Shermonte, your host for Beyond Today and Assistant Executive Director for the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission. In our last program, we talked with Planning Commissioners Jan Smith and Jackie Wilson. In today's show, we want to talk with some other planning commissioners. You know, the planning commissioners are citizens of your community, and it's interesting to know why they got involved in their community and the planning commission. Today we have invited Dee Merritt of Tampa, who has been a planning commissioner since 1991, and Ron Govan of Temple Terrace, who is serving his first term on the planning commission. Dee is with us first. Dee, you got on the planning commission in 1991.
Yes,
that's quite a while.
Quite a while, yes.
I'd like to know how you came to Tampa and got involved in civic activities. I know you weren't born here, were you?
No, I grew up in Jacksonville, a very small community, very close-knit, school within walking distance, in fact, right across the street from my house. A kind of a neighborhood where you could walk just about everywhere, to the grocery store, to the shopping center, to the movies. So I guess I came to Tampa with a sense of having that kind of neighborhood everywhere, and attended school here and decided that I liked the character of Tampa, and decided to stay.
Now you work at the university now, don't you?
Yes, I'm with the Professional Development Center, and I work as a job coach and trainer for child welfare counselors, those persons who apply for work, for instance, as foster care workers or protective supervision or investigations for abused and neglected children, have to be trained for certification, and I am one of those persons who trains them so that they can become certified.
Right. You talked a little bit about your neighborhood when you were younger, and I think that's interesting because it sounds like you're describing where planners want to go in the future, but you were talking about the past.
Yes, actually more than 20 years ago, because I came to Tampa more than 20 years ago, and so I like the character of Tampa. I like the feeling of home. I remember that my guidance counselor recommended the University of Tampa because it was a lot like home. It was just an extension of a community rather than a large impersonal university. And so I liked that experience and decided to stay.
So you did go at the University of Tampa then, not
Yes.
USF.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. And it is right in the middle of the city,
Yes,
as you
it is.
stated.
Yes, it is.
Well, in your job, I think probably you see maybe the effect of neighborhoods on some of these social
Absolutely.
problems.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can kind of tie that a little. How does a strong neighborhood help children develop?
Well, we were talking just yesterday about children in urban societies who have never touched a dog or a cat or a tree, and how urban sociologists back in the 70s used that information to look at the behavior patterns of children, and children who weren't in neighborhoods where they could be in touch with nature, who could feel a sense of extended family, really had more behavioral problems than those children who grew up in a sense of neighborhood that had a character where people felt like an extended family, and that your needs really could be met to a larger extent within your own little community. And so from a social work perspective, we found that the better integrated the community is, we think that children will respond appropriately. You cannot expect a child to have respect for his neighborhood or his neighbors or their property if it doesn't look like much. They can see one kind of neighborhood on the television, which is across the railroad track, but if their neighborhood does not have a character, then you can't really expect them to have respect and regard for persons and property when it just looks like a battleground.
A lot of our discussion at the Planning Commission deals with things like urban service area and
Yes.
suburban development. How do you see some of these trends, I guess, helping with redeveloping our inner city?
Well, more so in the inner city, I think citizens rely on things like public transportation and access to services through public transportation. I can remember as a child growing up where you didn't think second about if you needed to go downtown to catch a bus, to go to the larger department stores, to catch a special movie. But coming to Tampa and working as a social worker and being able to say to a client, don't worry about a car. You should be able to catch the bus. Well, having to catch the bus myself and it taking an hour and a half to get from my home, which is in the city limits, to my job downtown, and I'm a person of means, to expect that of a client who doesn't have those resources was really unrealistic. And so what we had to do as social workers is to try to put services close enough in the community so that you wouldn't put that undue burden on the client. So really the development of the community and services being available and transportation being accessible and affordable is really a key, particularly for inner city communities where you have clients who are not of affluent means. They need to have ready access to the same services and quality of services that other residents do.
Now, I guess this becomes an issue of even ease of employment in providing people opportunities. Absolutely.
There is this whole dilemma about welfare reform and how do we move that group of people from the welfare rolls, for instance, to a situation where they can be self-sufficient. Well, part of that is those persons being able to access those services. And it's easy to pick up a newspaper and say, my golly, there are 1,000 jobs that don't require any special expertise. Why can't these people just go get a job? Well, you first got to have access. You first got to have an understanding of public transportation. You have got to understand where babysitting services are so that you can get to where you need to do and have your children safe with someone. You've got to understand how the transit system works. You need to know where to go if you need training on how to fill out a job application. And so a person could conceivably be in a maze of trying to go from one extreme of the county to the other before they can even apply for a job. For instance, a lot of people don't have proper identification. So they have to go to one place to get an identification card or a social security card. Another place if, for instance, the employer requires a police check, they've got to go to the police department. And I just think that when we set up our communities and our neighborhoods, we need to be mindful that the design and the friendliness and the ease of those facilities need to keep in mind that, there are people who need to access in a ready way, and it does have a serious impact on their quality of life.
Well, I think what you're saying is the physical environment does affect people's behavior.
Absolutely.
Sometimes people haven't believed that, but as a planner, I do tend to believe that.
They are very discouraged when they have to, as some people say, run all over town just to accomplish one task. I mean, we see that a lot of one-stop shopping of services is being made available by our governmental agencies. But I think even in the sense of being able to design our neighborhood so that small businesses are encouraged. Irregardless to where people live, they still need cleaners. They still need their shoes repaired. Their children ride bicycles. They need bicycles repaired. We need libraries. We need sidewalks so that they can walk safely or ride their bikes. We need bike paths in the inner city. I think sometimes people don't perceive residents of inner city as being people who enjoy those kinds of benefits of communities. But in fact, out of necessity, we've had to use them. But because they don't get the attention that some of the suburban areas do, then you're forced to walk on unsafe sidewalks or to ride your bicycle on unsafe sidewalks or on the street. Lighting is poor. You have to go more than 5 miles to a library if your child has homework. So we do need to address those areas within the urban core where we can enhance what's already there. We've got the infrastructure, we've got residents, we've got people who need those services. We just need to make the community viable for our citizens.
Dee, there's some trends, I guess, that are occurring in the city of Tampa. What has happened over the last 5 years? What do you see positive signs?
Yes,
negative,
I do. I am so excited about one of the initiatives of the Planning Commission, and that's the neighborhood plans. because what it does is it doesn't say to a community, you've got to look like the other community, that there's just one pattern. Meeting with the neighborhood, meeting with the leaders, meeting with the residents, and asking them, what do you want your neighborhood to look like? What do you remember? I remember in Jacksonville that red brick houses were the thing. If you lived in a red brick house, you were someone. Coming to Tampa, I found out that beautiful high ceiling wood framed houses with wood floors were the thing. Being at the University of Tampa, then I was introduced to Hyde Park, and I fell in love with those old houses. They say something about the character and the people, the ancestry of the community. And I think that what is happening with the development of neighborhood plans, that the neighborhoods can have a say in how their community is being revitalized. So that, for instance, people who have lived in public housing for 2 or 3 generations can now purchase a moderately priced home still in their community, in the Jackson Heights, Belmont Heights, West Tampa area. They can walk to grocery stores. It's wonderful that you have large chains who are willing to come back into the community and to provide clothing stores, to provide opportunities for children to have recreations, to have movies. And so I see this coming back into the urban core, and I'm very excited about that.
So you have seen a trend then a little
Absolutely.
bit toward improvement.
A little bit, yes.
But we have a ways to go.
There's a glimmer of hope yet.
Just going back on the transit issue again, I guess, because I do think that's important. Having an effective mass transit system, I think what you're saying is provides economic opportunities that would not exist otherwise.
Absolutely. Not just for the citizens, but it ties in with economic development too, because if you have a massive transit system that makes itself amenable to the residents, then that's going to boost the economy in that neighborhood. A person won't feel like they've got to go to, from, for instance, Ybor City or Jackson Heights, all the way to a West Shore mall. If you have a regional mall on 22nd and Hillsborough, and so you encourage the small businessman to stay in the community, because mass transit allows those people to stay in their neighborhood and access those services easily.
Now, I guess, is the environment a big issue in the city? You talked about children that hadn't experienced
Well, I do, and I think that the environment also lends itself to the quality of life in those neighborhoods. For instance, if there is a serious rainfall and there's flooding of the streets, we know what that causes in the average neighborhood. But if your neighborhood is already deteriorated, if there are not sufficient sidewalks, if there's not sufficient drainage, then those people are more seriously impacted because they're having to use mass transit, for instance, or carpool. And so if the environment is not such that it can handle those natural situations, then those people are impeded in their daily activities. I think that getting children to respect nature. So many parks are not well maintained or are able to sustain the number of citizens who need to use them. And so I do think that, you know, we need to make sure that the environment invites people to enjoy their neighborhoods.
Right.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Dee. When we return, we'll talk with Ron Govan, Planning Commissioner from Temple Terrace. Welcome back to Beyond Today. We're now talking with Planning Commissioner Ron Govan. Welcome to Beyond Today, Ron.
Thank you.
I wanted to find out a little bit about your background before we get into the planning issues. I understand you're a native of Tampa?
Yes, I am. I've been here all 58 years.
Now, which parts did you live in, or what's your background?
Well, basically, my family came over here from Cuba in the early 1900s, and to become cigar makers and work in that industry. And then, so for the early years, our family lived in the Ybor City area. And then, as I was growing up, we lived in the Tampa Heights area. and still own property in Tampa Heights. And then I guess about 12 years ago, I moved. My wife and I moved out to Temple Terrace, and just love the community that exists there.
Now you're, I guess, is it proper to say you're a small businessman, or
Yeah, sure.
you have your own business, I guess?
You know, in relationship to businesses, yeah, we're small. We employ approximately 60 people. But
Well, that's pretty big.
well, for our industry, it's extremely big because we primarily, not primarily, what we do is make rubber stamps, signs, badges, vinyl lettering, all different types of identification and personalized products.
Now, is your market primarily the Tampa Bay area, or do you extend out farther?
No, actually, our market is the entire United States. We do have a very strong presence in Tampa, having our business being really in business since 1934. So we do have a strong presence in the local market. But our primary emphasis is the national market. We do all the products, as for instance, if you walk into a Nations Bank anywhere in the United States, the name badges, the door signs, the desk blocks, the rubber stamps, we do those for them for every bank in their system nationwide. Other customers are like Eckerd's Drugs, SunTrust, just pretty much national accounts.
So when we see what might be considered a smaller business in Tampa, it really influences go farther out.
Yeah, in our product area, we're very large. We're probably in the top 5 producers in the United States. We ship on a daily basis. We ship over 2,000 units out of Tampa daily. So.
Well, let me ask you, how did you get involved in the Planning Commission? That seems not quite related to your business.
Well, I guess. You know, I'm extremely active in the Temple Terrace area. I've always enjoyed being around, seeing things happen, improvements. Of course, being in business, planning is, if you're going to succeed, planning is hand in hand in what you do. So I just really was struck that that my years of experience in Tampa, having been a resident for all my life and seeing so many of the changes, and then having lived in some of the areas that are now going through the most dramatic changes, that I could offer something from my business background.
It's interesting that you said that planning is involved in business. Sometimes people make us think that government is the only people that do planning, but that's not really true, is it?
No, planning is the essence of success, really. Whether it's in government, whether it's in churches, business, even in families. I mean, if we're really going to look at the success of a family, it's because things have been thought out and then performed. And so planning is critical. And of course, to government, you would think that after all the years of things being planned that it would all be done, but it just seems like it goes on and on forever.
Yes. They say planning is a continuous process.
Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about Temple Terrace being somewhat of a unique community in Hillsborough County, one of only 3 incorporated cities that we have. Tell us what attracted you to Temple Terrace, and what are the things that you'd like to protect there?
Well, Temple Terrace is, as our outgoing mayor likes to say, is the 3rd largest city in Hillsborough County, but also, as he likes to say, it's the best in Hillsborough County. And it's just a great community. It's a little over 20,000 people, and it's a pretty much a planned community. It's well maintained. Because it's so small and yet has all of the services, it really offers a great level of service. For instance, in police, fire rescue, that type of thing, because you are so small. And so our services are great. And yet it's large enough that you have all of the amenities of a larger community. And of course, we're totally surrounded, as you're well aware, by Tampa on several sides and Hillsborough County on the other side. So we have everything we want and yet have a great community. In a smaller community too, you can become active and really know a lot of people and really enjoy a lot of people. So that's primarily what drew us there.
Well, Temple Terrace does seem to be a size that a lot of communities shoot for. Around that 20,000 seems to be a size where you can know a lot of people and have neighborhoods connected. Now, Temple Terrace at one time really wasn't that connected to Tampa. It seems, as a boy, I remember we drove through orange groves and then came on to Temple Terrace.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I can remember as a young child, our family used to like to go out to Hillsborough River State Park. And I can remember that we lived on Florida Avenue at Palm, which is in the middle of downtown Tampa. And when you'd get out toward about Bush, I mean, everything disappeared. You know, you were strictly on two-lane roads. And I remember by the time we went right close to where I live, which is River Hills and Fowler, that, I mean, you just felt you had to break out the sandwiches and eat a snack that you'd traveled so far. So yeah, it's dramatically changed. It was a very small community, and really over the last, as a matter of fact, in year 2000 it's going to be 75 years old. It'll be the Jubilee. And
do they have big plans for that?
No. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think we have 75 people involved on the committee, and
that's great.
It'll be quite an occasion for the city. But yeah, it's developed into a very nice city. Of course, built around a golf course, and of course having the Hillsborough River there is just phenomenal. And I just a year ago was fortunate enough to move onto the Hillsborough River, and I now live on it, and always wanted to. And it is a fabulous resource, just a great place to be. But again, you ask for your interest, and why would you be interested in planning? Well, I think things like the Hillsborough River and other resources that we have, unless we plan for them, they're not going to be there. And I think the river is probably a good example of what can happen. For many years it was really in decline and had major problems. And really until planning came into the situation and things were thought out rather than just happened to the river, it not only became a source of water, but it's really becoming a very lively source of nature and wildlife, and just a great place to live on. I'll tell you that. Well,
at the Planning Commission, I know we talk a lot about this idea of urban sprawl and controlling growth. How do you see those concepts affecting Temple Terrace in the future? Well, is there areas for redevelopment in Temple Terrace?
Yeah, there really is. We, having been a city for 75 years, you begin to hit some of those notches of growth, and really, I guess the main growth in the business area, which is the corridor of 56th Street and Fowler and Fletcher, probably took place in the early 50s or during the 50s, and so you're approaching a period of over 40 years old, some of it approaching 50. So you're are having a decline in what it does and what it was built to do and what it should do today. And so we have a very strong effort in our city to redevelop that. And to that end, right now, there's several programs that are being implemented and planned to try and take some of the areas and restructure them, use some of the new concepts that are around, possibly get some transportation off of 56th Street in certain areas so that the traffic flows better, maybe use some traffic calming town center concepts to bring the people, or not bring them in, because you can't bring them in, but you can make them want to come in. And so I think there's a lot of the current planning that's going on that should well suit the city.
So there is some thought about trying to create a town center atmosphere.
Yeah, there really is. We're in the process of building a town center, it's called, but it's a civic center that's going to be built on the river, and The plan right now would be to hopefully tie that together with the business district.
And you have a new library, isn't that correct?
Yeah, we have a brand new library. And
a country club, I believe.
And the country club has been updated. The northwest corner of Bush and 56th Street is under development right now. There's a very large Kmart that's been redone in a with the red tile roofs and to blend in, and there's a Walgreens being built, and I believe Publix is moving their store, and it's all being built even though we really don't have an overlay plan for downtown, although that's part of the long-term thing, is to try and control how it develops and or how it redevelops, really. And so there's some good things happening down there, and I think the main thing now is to make sure they happen right. And,
now, Temple Terrace has a mixture of uses, I guess. There is some multifamily in Temple Terrace, isn't there?
There's a lot of multifamily, and of course Temple Terrace now goes. A lot of people aren't aware of it, but if you go out to Fletcher and the river, between the river and the interstate, all of that to the south, between the interstate and the river, is Temple Terrace, and is very nicely developed into part of the corridor off of the interstate there. We have some, actually 2 or 3 very large business complexes that have gone up in there, and of course Telecom Park. All of that is part of Temple Terrace. So we do have an area that is newer, technology-driven type complexes.
Well, it would seem those complexes close by the residential area would make it attractive for someone working there to also live in that community.
Yeah, it is a great it's a great place to live and work. If you can get that situation. Of course, Temple Terrace is also a corridor. I mean, we got to be aware that 56th Street is a main corridor of traffic as it travels through our city, and so a lot of New Tampa comes through Temple Terrace on the way home, and so we need to take advantage of that and have our merchants take advantage of the fact that that the traffic counts are there, whether we want them or we don't want them, and we might as well use them.
Maybe
if they're
slow
there.
it down a little so they can observe what's available.
Yeah,
as they
I think the other night we discussed some traffic calming things in the Planning Commission, and super ideas of making people slow down a little bit, and giving the pedestrian a little bit of right in the process. So
we've kind of swung too far to one direction. We need to get back in the middle.
I think we tend to do that in in developing. We find something good and then we run with it until we run and get exhausted.
Right.
So
well, Ron, thank you very much for being on the show and telling us about Temple Terrace.
Well, I appreciate it.
If you have any comments about today's shows, you can reach us on our hotline or on email as listed here. I'm Ray Charmonti on behalf of the Planning Commission. I thank you for thinking beyond today.